Disruption and change is the reason the fintech and insurtech industry exists at all. Because as our society changes, so must the financial infrastructure that greases the wheel of commerce change. And today's guest is a perfect example of disruptive insurtech and fintech solutions that serve our modern, changing world. Welcome to the Talent Equals podcast. I'm your host, William Laitinen. Today's guest is the co-founder and president, Dustin Walsey, from the exciting and fast-growing fintech, Buckle. Buckle serve the gig economy through insurance and financial products that are hyper-tailored for their community. And for this reason, they're a great case study for us here on the Talent Equals podcast. So because we can explore how they're building a community, how they're creating a financial ecosystem, and the importance of company values in great recruitment. Dustin is a wonderful guest, and what they are building at Buckle has purpose and value. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, and learn as much as I did through the conversation. So without further ado, I give you Dustin Walsey. Dustin, welcome to the Talent Equals podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, William.
Wonderful. Well, hey, Dustin, I've been super looking forward to getting you on the show to talk about Buckle because, I think all of those who are around the insurtech space have been observing Buckle and Buckle's progression over the 5 years that you've been established and hit a milestone recently of getting your Series B for 60 million. So congratulations on that and the progress towards that. So I thought really just sort of kick it off for the community, people who don't know who Buckle is. Just tell us a bit about, the origin story and, what Buckle is and how you came to it.
Yeah, again, thank you for having me, William. First of all, Buckle is a financial services platform really focused on people in the gig economy. We're really doing great things for the people that support the world that we live in. The story of Buckle has evolved, and it's a really great story. Whereas it started for simplicity's sake as insurance for basic Uber drivers, has evolved into insurance for everybody that is participating in the gig economy. And the gig economy has exploded over the last few years, not just from moving people around, but goods, services, food, packages, prescriptions, you kind of name it. Where Buckle has really evolved is to help these people buy and acquire the financial services that they need that's customized, tailored for them, both in form of coverages, pricing, and in a way where they can consume these services when, how, and where they need it. Because the gig economy is this emerging workforce, not just in the United States, but across the world that is changing the way the world operates. So what's so exciting about Buckle is that we're sitting right in the middle of the gig economy trying to help these people who support the world that we live in. So that's a quick level of Buckle.
Thank you. Let's dig into that a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's an interesting distinction you make between being a insurer and being a financial services organization, because that was your origin story, very much that you come from insurance yourself background, right? This is how you sort of came to the idea, if I'm right, that you were in the broking space yourself. Maybe just tell us a bit about that initial idea and how it has gone from insurance to financial services.
Yeah, so in 2008, I got into the insurance industry on the brokerage side. Still to this day, spend a lot of time focusing on brokerage from a prior life. But what ended up happening is I started insuring taxis and limousines in Atlanta, Georgia. One day out of nowhere, all of a sudden, some younger friends of ours are like, hey, you got to check out this thing called Uber. And to remind everybody, in the early 2010s-ish, Uber started out as a black car service where you would use this app and a limousine or black car would come pick you up and, to replace taxi services that were in the United States. So what I figured out is, wait a minute, if I can use this app and get in the back of an Uber and hail these drivers, I could actually sell them insurance while I'm talking to them, and they can actually make some money while they're driving around. And that became the idea of selling, black cars, insurance to these drivers. Well, anyways, I started, insuring most of the Ubers in the state of Georgia, and they showed up one day and said, Uber, the guys from Uber, hey, we're going to start allowing this product called UberX where people can use their personal autos to move people around the same way a black car works. And that's where the idea of Buckle started, because in the insurance industry, and it truly exists in the financial services industry as well, when people use a personal auto policy to do business, there is coverage gaps. And that became glaringly apparent. And as a broker by background, a salesman by background, I didn't have an insurance policy that I could truly sell these drivers that would cover the use of a personal car while doing business for Uber. And that's where the idea of Buckle came from, is there was this gap that these drivers had, that this personal auto policy wasn't providing the proper coverage to these drivers that were driving people around. So in roughly 2016, I reached out to my partner, co-founder, good friend, Marty Young. And technically 2017, we started what would become Buckle today as the original thesis of, insurance for Uber drivers. That's really how simply it was. Kind of giving you a background of how we evolved. Fast forward, today. So COVID hits and people stop moving around. And again, we're, insurance for Uber drivers and Lyft drivers now, because Lyft's now a big player, and we're totally panicking. And, the world's stopping. We make some hard decisions. But what ends up happening with COVID is it actually turned out to accelerate the gig economy. It accelerated what Buckle has become, because while people stopped moving around, goods and services became the focus of being delivered to our households. So all of a sudden, groceries are being delivered, prescription drugs are being delivered, your basic household goods, toilet paper, toothpaste are being delivered. And there's all of a sudden this explosion in the gig economy of people delivering goods and services. Now the world starts waking back up again. Uber and Lyft start taking off. Now our habits have changed, and now we're using and subscribing to all these services that are delivering all these household items, these various items to our home. Not just myself, but people like my parents now have had their habits changed and they're consuming differently. And what turned out to be the scariest time in my professional career around Buckle, because we had this incredible company that we had built, COVID hits, it actually became one of the great evolution points, because the gig economy became mainstream in the world that we live in today. So, Buckle has gone from, just insurance for Uber, Lyft drivers, but to everybody who participates. And in the United States, it is a huge percent of the population that is actually delivering goods and services today that we're helping these drivers.
Yeah, what I hear in that certainly is like you started out with this premise that was quite niche in and around a new and emerging piece of technology and community of workers. But as that niche and that new economy has developed, so have you guys had to develop, right? And it's, I suppose, the fascinating thing being in and around new businesses. You would have started as an insurtech, right? But thinking about how you deliver to them in a way that they need. And you've often talked about a community. So this is kind of my convoluted link here, is that you, throughout your material on Buckle, the way that you talked about, you sort about serving your community, serving your customers and this community of drivers that you have. So has that been the way, how important has it been for you to focus on the needs of your customers in terms of, and then the evolution and how you react to that? So tell me a bit about that.
We've always been focused on, a mission-driven company. But I think what I personally learned, I'm probably talking safely for Marty on this and most people in the company. So COVID hits, and all of a sudden it's this workforce, the gig economy, who is supporting the world that we live in today. They're the ones that are on the front lines fighting the war against COVID. I mean, it's also the cashiers, the people stocking the shelves at the local drugstores and the grocery stores. I'm not discounting them by any means, but all of a sudden, this whole entire workforce is out there, supporting our society, as we have the luxury of working from home, being more secluded than most, and this is the workforce. And it gave me this greater appreciation. It gave us a greater appreciation that this is bigger than just in insurance and credit and some of the things we can talk about later. But this is the society that I want to be a part of, that helps these people who are helping us, that support the world we live in, right? And these are people that are on the front lines in a war, and it's the war of this pandemic and COVID. So I gained a true deep appreciation for what these people are doing. They're working. They're supporting our world, and that really became a mission, a driving force that took further root in Buckle, as we really try to advocate for our people. I mean, on a side note, as services, we were helping our drivers apply for government programs that they were available and things, just because that's what we are. It became a really awesome experience. And really, every time I can help these drivers, it builds the community, and it's important stuff.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I hope you do, and I can maybe see this, that the drivers that you support, they're all like little independent businesses, aren't they? They're not like part of a big conglomerate generally. These are like individual gig economy people hustling for their family, making ends meet, trying to build something for the future. Because a lot of drivers that you meet are either immigrants or people first time coming to the country, wherever they're in. And certainly so many of the Uber drivers I've met, or of course they're not. They've been in the country a long time, but they're trying to build and create a foundation for their family. So how much of that do you identify with as well as an entrepreneur, someone who's run their own businesses, and does that light you up as well?
These are people that also have full-time jobs, right? They might work at an Amazon warehouse. They might work at a restaurant, and they're doing these gigs part-time to supplement an income, right? It's helping, maybe it's pay for a vacation. Maybe it's help paying for school. It's paying, for student, their kids to have, something, play in a sports league or whatever. So the workforce is incredible. Now, as an entrepreneur, which I fundamentally am at the core, you read all these niches that these people figure out how to really maximize their time, their assets to generate additional income, whether it's figuring out how to do something really unique for DoorDash or Grubhub, or how they find a niche within Uber and Lyft, or some of these TaskRabbits who are deploying their services. So it's a really awesome way for people to leverage their time, their skill sets, and things that they can do to better their lives, right? So where Buckle kind of fits in is, well, how do we give them the tools in whether it's insurance, we'll talk about credit later if you'd like as well, but give them the tools that they can also,
yes, please,
take advantage of their ability to save money and have the right coverages and things that they need, because they're doing things that 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we never thought would ever be in existence.
So, okay, I do want to touch on credit, because I think the credit's really interesting offering you guys have developed, which comes really to speak to the full sort of financial services platform ecosystem that you guys are creating. But like, in terms of why don't I, as a gig economy driver working on the weekend, just go and use a big auto insurer? Why am I coming to Buckle? What is the technology or the solution that you're offering that makes it unique? Why do you exist in that way?
I mean, there's a lot to that question. First of all, we built this whole thing with the gig worker in mind. Even though we started with Uber and Lyft, and then it's evolved into all these other pieces, it's always with this gig worker. So we understand their demographics, how they like their buying behaviors. We understand that they typically don't have high credit scores. And we built this whole platform with that in mind from the beginning. When you look at like the traditional insurers in North America, there's a few of them. There's not, hundreds of them. They tend to rely on things like credit score, very traditional underwriting metrics that a lot of these drivers, don't necessarily have. So for example, if I take credit, and I'll use the word credit in form of leasing vehicles, right? Banks are great when you show up with 2 years of a W-2 income and a credit score and they can underwrite it. But what happens when a driver shows up with they are a barista at Starbucks, so they have a W-2, they're using that, they have benefits from there. They might have a 1099 from DoorDash, a 1099 from Lyft, a printout from Grubhub, and all these other small income sources. And then they go to a bank, and a banker's like, I don't know what to do with this because they're just not traditional. And when we built out Buckle, it's understanding that these people are not traditional and there's all these other data sources and income sources that need to be captured in these people's lives because they're real and they're material. And so when you look at the traditional banks, the traditional insurers, they're just not designed that way. They're, old legacy systems, credit driven, very traditional, things like I said, mentioned a second ago, W-2. And that just gives us this great advantage to be nimble, unique, and the likes.
So hearing that, sort of capturing the information that matters to your customers so you can then in turn offer them a set of solutions which actually deliver for what they need in the flexible way that they need them. And so I find that cool. So you've gone from like you're being able to offer an actual insurance policy which covers them properly doing this work, which isn't just like a private auto cover, to then also thinking about, well, these drivers need a vehicle, right? So you then had this innovation to sort of evolve the product offering there around credit. So just talk to us a bit about how Buckle does that.
When you have a poor credit score, you pay, 2-3 times, 20-30% in interest rate in many of these states because you have no credit. So you're overpaying on your interest rate. You tend to pay more for your sticker price on these B lots. So they're already being penalized in the form of their lower credit scores, their behaviors in the actual purchase of their car. So they're paying more for the actual car, they're paying more for the interest rate to finance that car. So we address that through the way we underwrite and doing some things like that to really lower that. So we're able to help them save them money. But the other thing that's interesting, the other phenomena that we've noticed happening is people are either upgrading their cars, right? So they're getting safer cars. So it helps the entire ecosystem. A newer car tends to be safer, whether it's, backup cams and airbags and just generally safer. The other thing that we're starting to see is they're upgrading to different sizes of the cars. So in the Uber and Lyft world, they're going from, call it, mid-size cars into minivans. So now they can drive not just, a 3 passengers, they can drive up to 4, 5, 6 passengers, and that allows them to earn more money. When you look at in the delivery space, bigger cars are allowed them to take bigger shifts for the delivery of packages, right? An SUV can deliver more than a midsize as well. So the whole ecosystem actually gets better, not only from saving them money, but the cars are better for the drivers, they're better for the passengers, they're better for the consumer. So it's a really great place to be in.
And you guys are then enabling them to get a better loan or a way to
That's
access
correct.
finance for those vehicles because you have a richer data source of their background, their income streams, the way that they behave. What's the sort of, how are you approaching the underwriting process for that?
Yeah, I mean, today you have to be an insured driver by Buckle. So we have to be able to see some of your data, right? And so we look at all of your kind of driving and your earnings and where it's coming from and how and where you're driving and some other data sets to really drive into that. So it's not that anybody can come lease a car. We have a very membership focused philosophy. Actually, we call our customers members, right? So when you get your membership or when you buy something for us, we try to leverage that data to continue to offer you better, cheaper, more affordable, targeted products and services that's really driven towards that. So the first thing, our entry to this gig economy is the insurance product, and everybody, it's a needed item. In the United States, it's insurance is required by law. And then, but typically we move into the vehicle space as well. What's great about this whole thing is for most of these people, their car is their most important asset to be protected. It has value. B, it's also their revenue source, right? They use it to generate revenue. So if we can help this group build equity faster in their vehicles, they achieve greater economic freedom. And that's really what our vision is to help people achieve economic freedom. And, you know, saving $50 a month, saving, on an insurance policy, or saving, $100 a month on a lease is a real number and can represent 10-15% of when some of these drivers take home pay. So it makes a difference, and it's awesome when we can do that for these drivers. And we see it when our customers, our members talk about us in Facebook groups. We see it when they talk to our member services team. That's our agents that deal with these customers. We get a lot of referrals and word of mouth because this is what we're about. So it's great. It's great.
This members distinction is something interesting. So you're saying that you're focusing on those members, which also gives them a sense of inclusion and a membership as part of your community as well. And you know what, I really appreciate this focus on community, and not just because, well, one, it is important. I mean, let's not like beat around the bush. Like from a economic and business standpoint, commercial standpoint, having a group of customers who think of themselves as more than just customers, they think of themselves as members, as part of a community, means there's more loyalty. There's probably a greater stickiness to them within the organization. But I think when you think about it as your own organization, as in Buckle, when there is a focus on delivering, and there is a set of values which speak to, we are delivering for a membership community. They are part of our business. We are part of a community with them. I think that can also help to drive some better behaviors as well. So there's like that virtuous circle, right, of doing something for people in the right way, which actually also translates into commercial success. Is that also how you see it? I presume so. If you say no, we're pretty much screwed here. So yeah, don't let me down now.
That's an easy way to cue it up. Without a doubt, I think membership in general is a greater sense of community, and if we can help gain this greater sense of community, it does drive better behaviors because the whole community wins when the community behaves better. So if I'm able to help a driver get a lower rate on insurance or vehicles, and that virtuous circle continues to spin, I can continue to offer it. Versus the reverse is when there is lack of membership or community, I believe over time will drive prices higher and higher and higher, because there's no loyalty both to a brand, an idea, a philosophy. And I think USAA has done an incredible job with that. And I'm sure we can go over other companies. Now, I think it also applies internally as we deal with our customer base or our members as well, whether it's our claims team, our member services team, whoever is talking to these customers. There's just this other sense that we're kind of all in this together. We really understand what you're dealing with. So when you get into an accident, we understand how important that car is. And if we can get that claim processed, for example, 2 days faster, a day faster, and get the car back on the road, or get the right replacement car that allows them to continue earning and to continue to get back to their normal lives, it really, really makes a difference. So it also creates, I don't want to say a sense of urgency, but a sense of loyalty back to the customers, that we have to continue to perform at the highest standard, because if you're going to be a member of our world, we've got to also support that in the best way possible. So how do we give that experience back that creates this, bi-directional members protect us, we protect our members, philosophy? Yeah. Because if not, it's just a transaction, and we're trying to be more than just a transaction, right? I can go buy insurance on, whoever.com. I can go to a dealership and buy a car. There is no loyalty there. How do we build this loyalty that protects the entire ecosystem? Because the ecosystem is just incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think the word protection there is really, really important, because my own experience of financial services is that it's very transactional. It's very much at like my bank, even though I've been with them for 15 years, I don't really know them. They don't really know me. Do I feel like they got my back? No, I think I'm just a cog in, a single entity within a massive machine. But I can imagine with gig workers, by the nature of what you're doing as a gig worker, you're on your own. to a degree. You're on your own, serving, have the freedom to operate, which is wonderful. But knowing that maybe you've got somebody behind you, an organization that's actually trying to look after you when the shit goes down, then that's great. Because I certainly know from my experience recently, when my health insurance didn't work out very well, like my wife got ill, she had a head injury. And when it came to like being served by our insurer, it was terrible. And people listen to the show when I bang on about this, but it was true. And I did not feel like they had my back. I felt like they were just trying to protect their balance sheet. And that has led me to be like, well, now I need a different insurer. I need someone who's going to protect me, and a financial institution is going to protect me in a different way. So I love that.
And I think the nice thing that we're finally really starting to see is also the delivery and the TNCs, DNCs, the companies, the dispatching of whether it's food. They're really starting to care about this workforce. You're starting to see it in programs that they're trying to offer their drivers, benefits that they're trying to get to their drivers. They're partnering with us to try to help get this type of insurance to their drivers, and it's real. And I think, as time passes on, this membership base, this group of drivers is going to help the whole thing.
Do you typically find that a driver is working for multiple firms, like an Uber and a Deliveroo, or a sort of a Just Eat, or
like if you think of it in a couple of ways, right? Like I typically order my meals around traditional meal times, right? Breakfast, lunch, dinner. So there's a segment of drivers that, work that segment. But hey, after I've delivered, lunch for, call it DoorDash or Grubhub, I need to go deliver packages or groceries for Amazon or Instacart. So I'll work for them, during off hours. It's actually funny. I think extroverts tend to do Uber and Lyft. Introverts tend to do more food and, package delivery because they don't talk. So we see different behaviors of different people. It's fascinating. It's funny. My wife hates when we get into an Uber or a Lyft because I am just chatting up the driver, figuring out what's going on, because they just see the world differently and they see all the stories. It's awesome.
I'm smiling at that, Dustin, because I think of myself as an entrepreneur, and I'm always fascinated by different. And I generally always talk to like a taxi driver or an Uber guy, sort of like that. And I want to know what they're doing. Like, how is business? Not just because it's a bit of a cliched question. I genuinely want to know how they're doing it.
To a lot of listeners that are in the UK, if they live in London, where the United States is different. And this, I think, is a really important distinction. Outside of, call it Manhattan, San Francisco, our country is really spread out, right? So they're not like full-time drivers all over the place like they are in the big cities that exist in the States. So these drivers are doing all sorts of different things. It would blow your mind how often I hear, someone's handing me a business card for they do real estate, or they're doing all sorts of things, and they're just using this to supplement time, supplement income. So when you break that paradigm outside of the big cities, where the most of the driver force in the United States is, and they're all mainly part-time drivers. I think the stats, low 90s are part-time drivers. It's fascinating all the things that they do on as additional hustles, and this is just a piece of it. Some meeting customers, all sorts of things. So it's really awesome. But again, my wife can't stand it because we're usually going out to dinner or something where she's happy not to be with the kids, right? And we're taking a ride, and she wants me to pay 100% attention to her, and I've got to interview the driver. And
yeah, I know that one. I'm sure our wives would see eye to eye on that one, certainly. But what an exciting opportunity as an investor in Buckle to say the potentiality to serve a customer, a member, in so many different ways, right? So, like, this is really exciting how you can go from being just an insurer to being a financial services platform, right? And that's how you can start layering in so many different things. Maybe at this moment, actually, be a nice time to sort of just to sort of switch gears a little bit and just talk about the journey, because I think a lot of the people who listen to Talent Equals are in the industry, are founders themselves, or investors, or people who've been through the journey themselves. And you mentioned earlier, look, you've been around for 5 years, and any business that's been around, either for a long time or short time, has recently had to go through quite a big change of the market. So I sort of wanted to it hasn't always been easy for you guys either, right? Because you've just experienced COVID. So maybe you could just sort of explain to me a bit about what it was like during that period to have everything transformed, and how, you have approached like organizing Buckle in a way that has allowed you to ride out and survive and come out the other side like you have now and take your B funding and to go again. So tell us about that.
So pre-COVID was an exciting time. It's an exciting time still at Buckle, but it was an exciting time. We were launching our products. We had launched our first state, getting ready to be this exploding startup at the time. And there was just a lot of excitement and energy. Actually, we have it again here today. But so COVID hits, and we really have to make some really hard decisions. And the decisions of how do we reduce our workforce? We make some hard decisions to protect the company, both to our investors as well as our employees, to our members who are customers who've already bought insurance from us. So it was a really tough time. I would tell you, I really appreciate my co-founder Marty, who really looked at and understood what was going on and really focused on making decisions, hard decisions based on factual data, accurate data, based on really strong values that we both share, and we're able to really go through that. But I mean, when you start a company in the really, really early days, when you're 5 people, 9 people, and we're all sharing an office, these people are not really colleagues. They become friends. They become family, and it's heartbreaking to have to lay off people or reduce people's salary. But we really focus just on honesty with people to do it. Again, like it's not fun. It was some of the worst conversations I've had, just because when people like go to battle with you, I mean, they go to battle and they work 100-hour, 120-hour weeks. They travel, they don't see their family. And, to get through that really is a test of character. It's a testament to the people that are still with us and the people and our investors that still believed in us. But so we go through, COVID and, in the beginning, you call it whatever, 2020, it was a scary kind of, 30, 60 days. And then the next thing all of a sudden delivery's there, and we start, reinventing ourselves a little and realizing it's actually, delivering packages isn't that far off from delivering people. And then next thing we start gaining a little more momentum and and all of a sudden we're starting to sell more policies, and then it starts picking up. And then now I kind of fast forward today, and it's crazy, explosive growth again, rolling out various states, trying to get more delivery partners on board, and the excitement and energy's back. But I think it's built on, strong people, shared values, shared vision, to make this all work. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. But as an entrepreneur, I mean, that's part of it. Every day can't be a great day. But I hope I never have to do that again. Let's say that. Again, it's. I mean, Marty and I run this company very much like they're friends and family along the way. So it's hard when you have to have those conversations. But we really focus on just being honest and truthful with people. And I think that's what people want.
I'm gonna
right. And I think that's the sign. I think that's the sign of a great company. Listen, William, everybody's at a company to make money, right? Let's be honest. I'd rather be playing golf. I'd rather be sitting on the beach somewhere. But what makes companies special is the people and the values and the mission that's out there. And I think we really check those boxes incredibly well. And it's a high bar to work at Buckle these days.
So I hear a few things in that, like so many co-founders, and I've had many founders on the show, and they'll often always, talk about the reality of being an entrepreneur, a founder of a business, is that, you can be up in the morning and then want to shoot yourself in the face in the afternoon. It's an incredibly difficult sort of tempestuous environment to be in, but you've got to keep focusing on I've heard this continually. It's got to keep focusing on your values, on the mission that you have, and the values that you have to guide you through all of these problems. And invariably, that also means having a really great management team around you, or a team of colleagues and friends that you can help you through that. So I can hear that it must have been really difficult to cut the workforce and then grow back. But so I would like to come to that in a moment, but maybe just focus on like the relationship with your co-founder, because like, what have you learned about having a co-founder? Was it easy? Like, is it easy having a co-founder? Is it difficult? How did you come to work with Marty? What's in that sort of magic between the two of you?
I mean, like any relationship, nothing comes easy, right? And I think there's a lot of, you make deposits and withdrawals in a bank. You make deposits and withdrawals within people, right? And that's from 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. I've had the luxury or the fortune to know Marty for 20 plus years. We did a startup years ago together, stayed friends. I mean, I was at his wedding, he was at mine. So having a really, really long-term relationship to start before we started Buckle, I think was a huge advantage. I know him and his personal values and what he stood for. So I didn't have to ever question that. And I can't stress how powerful that is. And that applies to a marriage. It applies to co-founders. It applies to friends and all the likes. So I think having that foundation of years and years of going through life together was absolutely critical. It is awesome to be able to have someone that I can truly talk to. I can confide in that what I'm concerned about or what I'm thinking about, what I need help on, what I may or may not be doing wrong. And I would say he'd say vice versa. To have someone in that position is tremendous. I would say the vast majority of our conversations aren't necessarily work driven, right? It's about, what we're trying to do. It's not operationally driven. It's like, hey, if we do this, how will the world look at that? And having someone that you can have that conversation with versus being all alone by myself, I would never do it. It's interesting if you ever get a chance to meet Marty and I. We're very different people. We're very yin and yang. But one thing that we do not have any yin and yang about. We have extremely, extremely shared common values. And I think that's what drives it. From family, integrity, humility, those things allows us to work. And I think co-founders fall down when that doesn't exist between the two of them. And just like any marriage, there is no person I trust morally, integrity than Marty Young, and it's a testament from his upbringing, from his parents serving in the military. He's a chaplain in the military, still to this day in the reserve, and it just makes it work. So it's that. I mean, but I'll tell you, as an entrepreneur as well, on the total kind of opposite side of the spectrum, it's my family and my wife at home that are able to help me get through it as well. Because those sleepless nights, it wears on them. It's not just the business that feels it. It's the home life, right? It's, missing dinners because I'm dealing with something, or coming home and I'm just like stressed out, and having that support system is so critical as well. And I wouldn't discount that. So, a co-founder, though, is incredible. If you have you can have the same vision, but you have to have the same values. If you have different values, it will not work. And I'm convinced of it, and I've seen it because going through the hard times. It's easy in the good times. It's just easy in the good times. It's those hard conversations that hurt, but when they come from shared values.
And you've identified 3 there. I mean, you said integrity and humility, and you said family. Are those like the ones, particularly integrity and humility, and or are there any others that you particularly identify as being critical to that relationship and being valuable in business generally?
I mean, integrity and honesty for me is trustworthiness. I mean, they're there. It's hard to put words on a shared valued relationship because it's deeper than 5 values, right? It's family, it's friendship, it's trust, it's laughter, right? It's being able to have that type of relationship based on common values. So, we've definitely instilled, some core values within the company that I think are identical to what him and I share. But there's deeper values and relationship that Marty and I have built over the years through, raising children, starting companies together, being on airplanes for, hours, and, bootstrapping a company, and, all those things. So it's great. But again, I bet if you were to look at, and I wouldn't know, but if you were to look at companies that failed that had co-founders, it's they didn't have common values.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you touched on it briefly. That anybody who listens to this show knows that I am a massive advocate of value-based recruitment and the values that underpin organizations. And so far, in every meaningful founder I've spoken to and organization, there's always been whether or not it's been explicit or implicit, that there are values that underpin that journey that they're taking. And so I was interested to hear them.
But William, to interrupt you for a second, you don't know someone's values though until you see it until you're in a hard spot, and that's I mean, everybody's got, again, it's easy when it's successful, and to see someone's values and to see that you're aligned with the values when at the toughest times, the darkest times, that's what values show. And
I would argue
that's what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're probably coming up to the same degree. I think actually one of those keywords we use is integrity. Integrity of what you say, do, and think all align. That's integrity, right? Is the ability to to say you're going to do something, actually do it, and be thinking you want to do it as well. It's so I hear it's important that we actually act with faith and sort of and honesty, because that builds trust, and trust builds the community, and the community is what ultimately all of this kind of falls down on, right? Can I trust you to get on with your job, and do you trust me to be fair and equitable in that arrangement? So I suppose but I can understand the importance of having values as a guiding light to the organization as well. So I wonder, from you talked about having them as an organization. Do you have any explicit values that you can share with us that are ones that you think really point to what Buckle is about?
So yeah, absolutely. So we break values at Buckle into two buckets: core values and cultural values. So our core values are unwavering. I mean, if you break one of these values, you can't work at Buckle any longer. And that's just the way it goes. Trustworthiness, honesty, and integrity. They're pillars, and there is no exception. If, again, you break it, I'm sorry. You just can't be part of this company. We have cultural values: be a driver, be reliable, be empathetic, be brilliant, be joyful, that help drive the organization to be better, to be fun, to do great things. But cultural values aren't, your job's on the line if you break one. Like, you don't have to be joyful to be great, but we try to encourage it, because, listen, if you don't love what you do, and if you're not happy working here, you're not in the right place, right? And if you're not reliable, if I can't count on you, come on. So, but the core values are the pillars of our organization. And I don't care if we were a financial services industry or you name it, whatever. Those are so critical. So
very cool.
That's how we approached it a little differently. I think, we spend a lot of time. I've been on every, companies, what are your values? You can Google all the companies, and most of them list 4 or 5, and, they're very, they're awesome. But we kind of broke it into 2 buckets, because we think there's some room in some cultural values, but there is no interpretation in core values.
Yeah, I hear that. Thank you for sharing those. And that's an interesting thing for me to hear, that the way that you kind of broke them apart into those kind of core and cultural values. I think they are very organizationally specific, because they ultimately have to come from the founders and then become a representation of the community. But I think certainly that you've got them. That's the important first thing. Anybody who's listening to this, I know I've spoken to some founders I know I need them, but I haven't conceptualized and communicated them clearly enough. I mean, what I'd say to that is at least start with something, right? And they can evolve, but knowing that you've got some and that people know what they are is a good place to go.
So no matter what meeting we have, and maybe not one-on-ones, but if we have a every other Tuesday we have the all hands, whether it's our operational committee, all these various committees. We always kick off every single meeting with vision, mission, and values, where someone has to present on that before we start the meeting on what they did during it. Could have been interacting with a customer, it could have been interacting with a vendor, it could have been interacting with another fellow employee, whatever it is. And we drive mission, vision, values on every internal call regardless, and we kick them off that way. Sometimes it's a 30-40 second anecdote, sometimes it's a 5-minute, 7-minute story, and it's the first slide on every deck that we use on all internal meetings, because it is a foundational pillar of our company. And it's awesome. And you get, all walks of the business. So we'll have someone from tech do it. We'll have someone from underwriting do it. We'll have someone from claims. We'll have once in a while on the executive team. And it's amazing how and what gets shared and how they align with our values. So, we live it in our meetings, and because of that, I think it translates extremely well on a day-to-day basis throughout the entire organization.
Yeah, I was going to ask, why is that important? What have you found it does for the people and the organization to share those examples?
Well, I think first of all, it brings everybody back to a common starting point on why are we here, right? Why is Buckle? So if we start every meeting with why in a real world example of how we live it, I think it creates a great common denominator, and it reinforces what's important to the company from someone that's not me, right? It could be anybody in the organization, and the batons passed, the hats passed around, and it's someone different every single time.
Yeah, I super like that.
I've never been I've never seen anything like it, and it's integrated now in core to our culture. It's actually become part of their culture.
Yeah, that's interesting. I really like that, and it's kind of like a micro action, which is easy to take, but reinforces a sort of a macro behavior as well for the organization.
It's interesting, right? It's like, I want to hear what, and it, I think more so than ever since we're really distributed, it's just sharing a real world experience that I would have never heard about, because we don't share an office. I don't get to have that coffee conversation. So it brings some reality to a group that's, there's over 100 of us that are distributed all over the country.
Great link for me, because I wanted to talk about this a little bit, because distributed working was just such an obscure, like kind of specific kind of cultural affect of organizations that before COVID was just like, you go, what the hell are they doing? They're doing that, really? That never worked. But you guys, so how did distributed working happen for you, and like what's been your experience of it so far?
Well, obviously from COVID that drove it. We all used to be really consolidated in one main office, two main offices. Yeah. Personally, being a mega extrovert that I am, I don't personally love it. I've learned to really be good at it, but I love the interaction with people. But we've completely embraced it, and it kind of feels like the gig economy, right? Everybody kind of works from everywhere they want, and how to do it. I think the big challenge is, how do you continue to build this great team foundation, culture, values in a distributed force, because everything becomes very Zoom driven, Google Hangout driven, and you lose the side talk, the quick, let's go run across the street and grab a sandwich or a cup of coffee or a beer. That interaction is lost. We continue to do a better job of trying to get everybody, at least the senior leadership team, the executive leadership team, out on the road, meeting people, trying to get our members as frequently as possible. And we spend a little more probably on offsites that we should, as we pull everybody together. Maybe it's probably still ROI very positive for the office space that we don't use, but it's building that team. I will tell you, when we all get together, it tends to be a lot of fun. People like to let loose because we work together so closely and never get to see each other. So there tends to be late nights when we have some of these offsites. So but it's hard. But yeah. I think in general people like it. I think people again, just like my parents now use Instacart and DoorDash. We've all learned our new habits and how to deal with it.
Have you felt that?
But I miss the office.
Yeah.
I'm an office guy.
Hey, look, it's a balance for me too. I mean, we went distributed as well because we just physically couldn't be together, and it has worked for us as a team. But I'm experiencing some of the same experiences that you have, where it's actually really lovely when we see each other. And I was able to give some of the team a hug, and I'm also a people person as well. And but but on the same time, it works for people. So it's that kind of balance. I wonder for you, have you seen any like dip in productivity? Was that one of your worries? Like, oh no, people aren't going to be as good at doing their job? Or how have you, what are some of the conceptions that you had in your mind that you've been surprised at?
Yeah, I think today that we haven't seen it, right? Being more on the early stage company, we're roughly 100 people working at Buckle. We've only hired ninjas, so we really don't. I don't have that worry. I don't think we have that worry now. As we go from 100 to 250 to 500, I think that becomes a little more challenging because infrastructure, bureaucracy, that starts getting built out. And I think some of those are the challenges that we're going to continue to invest in. I think there's some innovation and investing in tools that create community amongst a distributed workforce, very similar to what social media has done for our kids and the people who love it. Like, how do we embrace some of those internally? Personally, I spend a lot of time working on strategic partnerships. I still believe face-to-face is the most powerful thing to build a relationship. So, I try to get on the road a lot, whether it's to see, our customers, our partners, our employees as well. So, I think the bigger challenge will be in the next year to 2 years as we continue to scale. I imagine we'll more evolve into a hybrid model where we'll have a couple big, a hub or two or three that has people in place, because as our stuff and our services evolve and get more complicated, training becomes really challenging. Getting people up to speed, in a remote force, it's very difficult. I think it's harder to ask questions in this format versus like I can go up to the teacher right after a class, or I can go after someone in the company and, hey, can you explain that in detail? I think that's going to be the real challenge. Distance learning's been around forever, but we still send our kids to school, right? And I mean, in America, I assume the UK as well, last year when they were all virtual, it was just a failure, and they're all back in school. And I think there's a model where both of that has to occur within Buckle and in the corporate. But
I found
always a real issue.
I would say actually I found in my own experience on the point of like education and the distributed working, I looked at I have 3 children, and my eldest son is at a school where they were already using Microsoft Teams extensively. And for him, the transition was almost seamless, like to going from classroom to computer, and he loved it. The system was very much set up. The teachers were geared up for it. But I also recognize it was part of his personality that he was very comfortable with that. He's very comfortable doing his own work and being a self-starter. For my younger ones, they struggled more with that. They do like the social energy of people and being around and the structure that comes with the classroom. And I think also the primary school was far less prepared for, which is the kindergarten, far less prepared for the actual distance learning structure. You can imagine it. It was just very, very difficult. So I think there's a mix of really kind of both, the preparedness of the organization, the structures that exist, and also then the personality types of the people. So it's really hard, I know, to say either way, but and it's certainly something I'm hearing organizations are adapting, and maybe we're just all recognizing that we don't have to be one or the other. We can be a mix of two, right? And that's
I think there's a spectrum to learning, right? And I look at it through my eyes, the eyes of my kids, right? A 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. So they were a little younger a year, 18 months ago with COVID, but I see it at Buckle. The early stuff, right? The kindergarten, the formative years, it's hard to learn virtually, right? The advanced stuff, calculus and those sort of things, the hard stuff at Buckle is hard to learn virtually. I think some of the middle stuff, I guess here, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I think that's where the hybrid exists. I think in the middle, there's a virtual fit for it. But on each end of it all, I think that's where the challenges become. Because when my kids were showing up with, I can't do calculus anymore, but I can do algebra. Right. So virtual could work. But I can't teach my kid to read, like cat, dog, whatever, I think that's where the hybrid has to exist. But I do think, that's why we're opening some offices now and pulling people together more and more, because the data, the information, data, knowledge exchange, it's real in person, and it's different. And it's a side conversation. It's a meal, something over a meal that it just can't be replicated virtually. It just can't.
And if anything about your business model, what Buckle has told us and told yourself is that things change, things evolve, things become not what we expected them to be, and we have to adapt and grow in different ways, right?
Yeah, and I want your radical idea, and sometimes I need to get a beer to get you to tell it to me, because it might be a bad idea, it might be a great idea, but I don't get to hear it, right? By not getting to hear it, I also don't get to learn from you, and then that sparks some idea from me, which then and next thing you know, you have a new product or a new innovation. I can only imagine how much how many companies or how many pivots have occurred because of just some random conversation that turned into, wow, that's it. Right, it's an iteration on an iteration of a PowerPoint that the next thing you know, it's a new business plan.
So what we are talking about definitely is a lot of disruption to the market, a lot of change to your business model, which then you have to react to and then regrow from. New business way of working, serving different customers, stress and strain, and all of what happened over the last couple of years. I wonder, that brings me to how you keep yourself healthy, Dustin, because I ask everyone this as well. It's hard just being in a company anyway. It's really hard being a founder. So what do you do to stay healthy?
First of all, I'm a bit of a health nut. So I work out typically 5, sometimes 6 days a week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think it's critically important. Just being healthy in general. It's nice just having a break. I'm a big avid Pelotoner right now. For the last couple of years. Love that. I like to go for a run. I have a trainer come by, working out still as I get older, trying to stay in shape. I think diet is so critical as well. We are what we eat. So I invest a lot of time and energy into that.
So for those listeners who may not know, can you just tell them what Peloton is? And
well, they're in the UK now. I know that
they are.
There's a bunch of Peloton users.
Absolutely.
They're in Germany as well.
Yeah.
It is a bike that is like a spin class in your house with an incredible screen and audio, and you take spin classes.
At home, absolutely. And so those are it's like you got a screen and it streams in different lessons, and you can use them.
But now you can do yoga on it. You can do weight training. You can go running. They have treadmills. It's a whole lifestyle that exists. And I actually personally believe to be in good shape, it's a lifestyle. It's not an on or an off. So it's in everything. People who, when I travel, I'm always working out. I love actually going on a walk with people that I work with, and we have a conversation over an hour walk somewhere in the morning before our meetings start. So very, very focused on that. From my mental health, I love to play golf. So I like to get out there with my friends, be outside, enjoy the nice weather, get away from the world, try to turn my phone off when I play. But again, as someone who was always, an entrepreneur, always trying to achieve something, golf's a great game because it gives me a challenge that's outside of the workforce that I spend a lot of time doing it. I like to practice as well. And then chasing after my children tends to be a lot of work.
Yeah, I can hear that. Absolutely. So, that physicality, I can really understand it, particularly for someone who's energetic and doing exercise. It's one of those things that I know when it slips for me, which it does and did a bit during COVID certainly as well, is that,
What's your number one exercise thing?
My number one exercise thing, actually, honestly, is going for a walk and just being outside walking and and I'll also do exercise in my house, so doing yoga and pull-ups and sort of a small exercise regime that I have, and I try and keep it as micro as I can so that the behavior can stick. So I have a pull-up bar.
When you walk, do you listen to something, or are you quiet, or what?
Yeah, I do too. So meditation for me is also a really big thing. So I'll mindfully meditate and walk. So that's a new thing you can do, definitely. I use walking also as a way to pass ideas that I'm working on. If I'll do it with a friend and I will talk to them through a process while I'm walking, there's just something magical. And there's actually some really, really interesting science that underpins the process of walking and how how apparently we exert multiple forces of G through our feet, which pushes blood actively up through the body and into the brain. And the rhythm of a walk seems to have a perfect rhythmical match to our heart and our blood flow, which they've only just started to understand. So there is a real science going on with the power of walking and a cognitive capability that's happening. So I use
piggyback on that. So I like to walk as well, and I either listen to podcasts or I'll listen to my audiobooks. But what I have found is when I walk and then I listen to everything at 2 times speed, not 1 time speed, 2 times speed, that it's like watching a movie in subtitles. Like if you lose concentration for a second, you lose what's being spoken about or read about or the likes. So I find that I can consume tons of awesome information and get really, really focused on whatever topic I am listening to while I'm on a walk, versus if I'm like just sitting there, like I can't focus unless I'm on the move. So I consume a lot of data on walks.
I like that. I've never tried a 2 times speed. I know one of our previous guests, actually, when she came on, she told me that she likes to listen to all audiobooks at like 2.5 times speed. I don't, but I'm going to have to try that now and see if I can focus on it during the...
So I start at 1.5. 1.5, you'll be like, no big deal. Then you go to 1.75, 2. But I kid you not, you stop paying attention for 2 seconds. Data and the talk is going so fast that you have to back up. I find I pay extreme attention to it when it's going on, and I love it.
And you also mentioned you get a coach to come to your house as well. Is that right? So you pay for a coach to come in, and how often do you do that? That's something I've actually thought about. Is that a regular behavior?
Twice a week.
Twice a week.
Yes. Absolutely.
And what sort of coaches are they? Like just a health and fitness or?
Yeah, health and fitness, a personal trainer, but I have one that really focuses heavily on core work and body weight movement and things like that, stretching and the likes, because I think it's so critical. And I'm about to turn 47, staying as fit as possible is I think it's critical. I think it's the best thing you can do to live a long time is to be in shape.
Yeah, many people wouldn't think to have a coach come to their house. They would think that maybe they go to a gym or something like that. But that's actually a really nice way to think about it. Like you have a health tutor, right? Someone who's focusing on coming in twice a week. It gives you a nice anchor point as well, right? I can imagine.
Yeah, and they become also more than just a physical coach. They become somewhat of a therapist because you've known them for years. And when you're training with someone, you're talking and what's going on in the world or what's going on in sports or what's going on in your family, because you build these relationships and it's great. And Quincy, who I use, he's the most fit gentleman I know. And it's all about what you're, talking about diet and other things that we're listening to. And, like I listened to a podcast recently on longevity and how important grip strength is. And we're talking about that and all the randomness that comes with being, trying to be physically fit.
And may I ask then, just to brief on this, how did you find your coach? How did you find your health and fitness coach?
I was working out at a gym probably 10 years ago, and I met him there. And he was training people there at the gym. And then I'm like, hey, will you come to my house? And that's how we started.
Brilliant. Lovely.
But I love it. I love it. And I think it's some of the money most well spent. And then what ends up happening is when it's at your house, your children see it and they see the importance of physical fitness in their lives, and it really rolls on to them as well. And so my wife stays in shape, my kids are active, and I think it's so critical.
Wonderful. What a great piece of advice there. So there's a couple of things I certainly will dig into a little bit more myself. So I'm mindful of time here, and I always like to make sure I ask my guests about my favorite thing, which is books and like books that have influenced you. So do you have 3 books that you love more that really you either repeat back to or that have guided you on your journey you want to share with us?
I thought about that, and I was going to add another one last night when I was watching something on television. So my favorite business book is Good to Great. By Jim Collins.
Classic.
I think there's some just really awesome items in that book that just are big, hairy, audacious goals. Is the right team on the bus? Are they in the right seats? That one. So I love that. I just recently read, I cheated, I listened because I listen to everything, Killer Angels by Michael Cera. the whole company just recently, the executive team and the senior leadership team went to Gettysburg to study the Battle of Gettysburg and what was happening on the battlefield from both communication, feedback, those sort of things, and how that applies to the real business world. And that book was just incredible. It's a historical fiction about the Battle of Gettysburg and what was going on there in a fascinating time in the United States history. So that one was great. I'm a big golfer. I mentioned Zen golf. I love. You mentioned you're a yoga fan and a meditation fan by Joseph Parent. It really, it's the mental game of golf. And then I apply it to other things. And it's crazy. It's like, how do you listen to the birds chirp when you're trying to make a putt that alleviates pressure and stress at moments in time? And what other outside influences are going on that can allow you to focus more so on the task at hand? So those were the three that I'd laid down. And then I was watching an interview yesterday because I'm a big golf fan, as you know, and Tiger Woods is finally kind of back in the media and coming back. And I think a fabulous book is The Big Miss by Haney. And Tiger Woods as a golfer it's a fabulous book.
And The Big Miss is about Tiger Woods, is that right?
It's the story. Hank Haney was his coach for years when he won, a bunch of massive titles and majors and the likes. And it's the story of coaching arguably the greatest athlete to ever live and what his perspective of what it was like and how that athlete behaved and had to be as great as he was. And I think it's one of the most fascinating books I've ever read. But again, I'm a big golfer. I'm a big Tiger Woods fan.
Sounds good. There's some good recommendations in there. I mean, Jim Collins' Good to Great is an absolutely seminal book and so much in there. It's an absolute must. And Killer Angels about Gettysburg, Zen Golf. There's one, I think, such as Zen Art of Tennis is another one I've read. Which is
same author.
Is it the same author?
He actually started in tennis because he was a tennis guy. And then he's like, this will apply to golf. And he took it to golf.
Yes. I think actually it's very much a good recommendation because I've actually applied it to so many parts of my life, actually, that whole concept. So yes, I can thoroughly recommend it. And The Big Miss, anything that's got some good coaches talking about, managing high performers, it's a bit like catnip for me. So wonderful. Thank you very much for those recommendations. Well, Dustin, it's been an absolute pleasure, hearing about your story and what you guys are doing with Buckle. Anybody out there listening, I always like to end up with this, is like anybody listening who might be able to help you or like partnerships that you're looking for, investors, or any things that you're interested in people reaching out to you about. I always like to kind of end up with that one.
Yeah. I mean, our gravity is in the middle of the gig economy. So very interested in talking to other people, businesses that are either trying to participate, introduce products and services into the gig economy, specifically to the United States right now and for the foreseeable future. And understanding what these people need, want, and that are underserved and how we can, do better by them. So, again, how do we offer really good financial services to these members to make their lives a little easier? So I would say those are, the real focus.
Brilliant.
And, obviously you can find us at buckleup.com and, LinkedIn, Twitter, all the usual places.
Brilliant. I was just about to ask, we'll put some links in the show notes, to your social media tags and such like. So, well, that neatly brings us to the end. Dustin, thank you so much again for your time. I wish you and the whole member group at Buckle Up to as much success as you can muster. And let's hope this crazy ass COVID stays the hell away, and we can keep growing and doing some good stuff. Until then.
Well, thank you for having me, and had a wonderful time, and look forward to meeting you in person when we can come to the UK one of these days.
You better believe it. Wonderful. Take care, Dustin. Bye-bye.
Thank you.